Have you ever wished you could easily switch between different TOS versions without the hassle of physically swapping ROM chips? Or perhaps you're a developer looking for a more efficient way to test firmware across various TOS environments? Well, your wish has come true. The SidecarTridge TOS Emulator leverages advanced bit-banged emulation to replicate the internal ROMs of the Atari ST. This means you can now effortlessly access and run any TOS version, including custom ROMs like EmuTOS. Now you can connect the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator to your computer via USB, transfer your TOS image files, and select your desired version through a straightforward program on your Atari ST. No more manual ROM swapping, no more fuss, just pure, efficient performance. So let's dive in and get you started with this fantastic device. Before you dive in, let's ensure it's the perfect fit for your Atari ST. First, you must check your Atari ST motherboard model. To do this, open the case and look for the model number printed on the board, usually in the middle and bottom of the motherboard. Refer to our Compatibility section for a list of supported motherboards. If your motherboard model isn't listed, don't worry, just contact us for further assistance. Next, determine the number of ROMs your motherboard has. The SidecarTridge TOS Emulator currently supports Atari ST motherboards with 2 ROM chips. If your motherboard has a different number of ROMs, you'll need to wait for the next version, which will also support 6 ROMs. Now, check if your ROMs are plugged or soldered. If your ROMs are plugged, great. You can proceed with the purchase. If they are soldered, you'll need to desolder them and plug them into sockets. If you're uncomfortable with desoldering and soldering, we highly recommend seeking professional help to avoid damaging your Atari ST motherboard. Once you've verified the compatibility of your Atari ST motherboard, you can proceed to purchase the appropriate SidecarTridge TOS Emulator kit. Ensure you select the correct kit based on your motherboard model number and the number of ROMs. Ready to get started? Let's move on to the next section. After receiving your kit, let's ensure you have everything you need for a smooth setup. Here's the required components of what you should find in your kit. The SidecarTridge ROM emulator board already soldered onto the carrier board. Rescue cable and push button for entering rescue mode. SidecarTridge QR code card that links to firmware updates and documentation. You can also order some optional components like a 3.5 floppy disk with Switcher.TOS application to manage TOS versions on your Atari ST. This application can also be downloaded for free from our website. USB-C cable for connecting the emulator to a computer for firmware updates and TOS image transfers. It is recommended to have the following hardware tools. IC extractor tool safely removes ROM chips. A flathead screwdriver can be used carefully if you don't have one. Insulating tape avoids short circuits between the emulator and the motherboard. Computer with USB port for transferring ROM files and updating firmware. Regarding software and files, you will need TOS image files. You can download them from reputable sources. Switcher.TOS program. It is the application for selecting and managing the TOS images. It is free and can be downloaded from the SidecarTridge website or ordered on a 3.5 floppy disk. The SidecarTridge TOS Emulator has 2 modes, mass storage mode for transferring TOS image files and ROM emulation mode for booting the Atari ST with the selected TOS image. To enter mass storage mode, plug the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator into the USB-C cable and connect it to your computer. It can be connected to both the Atari ST and your computer simultaneously, but it will enter mass storage mode when powered on from the USB-C cable. If the SidecarTridge volume does not appear on your computer, ensure the USB cable is properly connected and press the reset button on the SidecarTridge TOS ROM board for a few seconds to enter mass storage mode. Once connected, open the SidecarTridge volume on your computer. You should now see the system files to manage the device and also an EmuTOS image file for your computer. For STF, STFM, and MegaST models, the file is 192 kilobytes. For ST and MegaSTE models, the file is 256 kilobytes. TOS is bundled with the device to help you boot without downloading the TOS images. With everything in place, you're ready to transfer your TOS image files. To copy TOS image files to the SidecarTridge TOS emulator, simply drag them into the SideCart volume. The emulator will automatically store the TOS images in the file system. However, there are some limitations to keep in mind. No directories. All TOS image files must be in the root directory. Long file names supports up to 56 characters. Longer names will be truncated. Maximum files supports up to 64 files. Exceeding this will result in an error. No fragmented files. Files must be stored in contiguous blocks to avoid fragmentation. As a result, it is strongly recommended that files be copied in a single batch. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that TOS image files are stored correctly and accessible by the emulator. Before copying TOS image files to the SidecarTridge TOS emulator, it is strongly recommended that you copy them to a folder on your computer. This way, you can easily restore them if needed and reduce the risk of fragmentation during the copy process. Create a folder on your desktop computer to organize your TOS image files. We use Mac OS in this example, but Windows and Linux are also supported. Please visit our documentation's compatibility section to learn about your favorite TOS images. We recommend renaming them to human-readable names of a maximum of 56 characters. This helps when selecting the TOS version with the switcher program. Once the TOS image files are organized and renamed, copy them to the device. For the sake of brevity, we are not showing you the multiple options for the device's mass storage mode. We strongly recommend reading the Getting Started section of our documentation. After copying the images, don't forget to unmount the SidecarTridge volume to force your desktop computer to flush the cache. We won't spend much time on opening the Atari case, as there are plenty of tutorials available online. Once the metal shielding is removed, you'll find the Atari ST ROM chips. Their location depends on the Atari ST model, STF-TFM, located on the left side of the motherboard under the power supply unit or below the keyboard. STE, near the keyboard connector, partially covered by the floppy drive. MegaSTE, on the right side of the motherboard close to the bottom edge, below the hard disk drive unit. If the ROM chips are soldered to the motherboard, it is recommended to seek professional assistance to avoid damaging the Atari ST. This guide assumes the ROM chips are socketed and can be removed without soldering. If you have a chip extractor tool, use it to carefully lift each ROM chip out of its socket. If you don't have a chip extractor, use a flathead screwdriver. Gently insert the tip under one end of the chip and slowly pry it upward. Repeat on the other end until the chip is free. Once removed, place the ROM chips on an anti-static mat or in an anti-static bag to protect them from static damage. Inspect the now empty sockets on the motherboard for debris or damage. If necessary, clean them using compressed air or a soft brush. The SidecarTridge TOS emulator is configured to replace the original ROM pin by pin. If the computer has jumpers to select the chip types, set them to match the original ROMs as described in the section Hardware Installation of the documentation. In this video, we will assume that the jumper is set in the factory configuration. Now, connect the SidecarTridge TOS emulator to your Atari ST motherboard. We need to find the correct orientation and alignment depending on the motherboard type. ST, STF, STFM. The SidecarTridge carrier board plugs into the ROM sockets marked High 0 and LO 0 on the motherboard. The High 0 socket is closest to the motherboard's bottom edge. The sockets are 28 pins wide, just like the SidecarTridge TOS emulator, making alignment straightforward. To insert the emulator, gently press the carrier board into the ROM sockets, applying even pressure on both sides to avoid bending any pins. Make sure it is fully seated and secure. Try to insert all the pins at once and avoid forcing them if they don't fit. STE. The SidecarTridge carrier board plugs into the ROM sockets marked as LO and HI. Insert the high part into the HI socket and the low part into the LO socket. Ensure the emulator is aligned to the left side of the socket. MegaSTE. The SidecarTridge carrier board plugs into the ROM sockets marked as LO and HI. Insert the low part into the LO socket and the high part into the HI socket. ensure the emulator is aligned to the right side of the socket. As a reminder, the Atari STE and MegaSTE have two 32-pin ROM sockets, but the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator uses only the first 28 pins. Again, ensure the emulator is correctly aligned in the socket. Before closing the Atari ST case, test the unit to ensure the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator functions correctly. Power on the Atari ST and verify that the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator is recognized and operational. It should boot into the default TOS selected. If it's not recognized or functioning correctly, power off the Atari ST and double-check the installation steps to identify and resolve any issues. If the problem persists, refer to the troubleshooting section for further assistance. Before closing the case, ensure there are no contacts between any elements of the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator and the metal shielding or any other component that could cause a short circuit. Be careful when reassembling the Atari STE case. To avoid a short circuit, place a strip of insulating tape between the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator and the floppy drive. Now that the device is installed correctly and functional, let's learn how to use it in the daily operation of the SidecarTridge TOS Emulator. To power your Atari ST, turn it on as you usually would. The SidecarTridge TOS Emulator will automatically boot the active TOS version. If no active TOS version is selected, the emulator will boot the default EmuTOS version provided with the kit. The Switcher program is a utility that allows you to switch between TOS versions. You can download this program from the main page of the documentation or order it on a physical diskette. Run switcher.tos from the desktop like any other TOS program. This program will display a list of available TOS ROMs with the following information: the list of available TOS ROM images, the currently active TOS ROM or the default TOS ROM, the TOS ROM used for rescue mode. Navigate the list with the arrow keys and press the return key to select the desired TOS ROM. The program will then reboot the Atari ST with the selected TOS ROM. This is the recommended way to switch between TOS versions. While it is possible to switch TOS versions by modifying the default.txt file as described in the Getting Started section of the documentation, this method is not recommended for daily use. This is a basic tutorial for a quick start with the device. Please refer to the documentation site for more details and information. Enjoy!